somewhere along my ambiguously sized top 10 is Violet Evergarden. One 13-episode show, an OVA, and 2 movies later, even the one that probably shouldn't exist, Violet is one of my favorite things ever. Simple in its premise, but certainly not with its execution. It's unbelievably good, and even more unbelievable that it's been 8 years since its 2018 release. In case you forgot, we kinda just made this time thing up. In the years since, Kana Akatsuki's been hard at work on her next project, Agents of the Four Seasons Dance of Spring, and willing to enthrall myself again in an experience some call cry porn, you bet your ass I was seated for this adaptation.
What makes me want you? Ooh, like I do, 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 baby.
If Violet was defined by its backdrop of the postal company, with the meat of each episode being Violet and the client she was visiting, then Four Seasons by design is the complete opposite of that. In Violet, it's not that you don't care about the postal company or characters like Hodgins and Cataleya. They make that company and by extension, the world believable, serving as a point of comparison to an emotionally developing Violet, with the core of the show remaining as Violet's characterization, not the year-over-year growth of Hodgins' postal company. In Four Seasons, the rules that govern the world are the core, taking place in a supernatural world where seasons don't change without an agent's input. Protagonist Hinigiku and bodyguard Sakura's very lives are defined by the fact that she's an agent of spring. Dangerous, random, and sometimes unwanted, becoming a seasonal agent is a concept that, unlike the recuperating world of Violet's auto memory dolls, isn't new in the slightest, because Four Seasons' world is deeply history. You're diving into a web of systems with more rules and stakes than what our pitiful lives could ever imagine, and the volume it's being fed to you is never to an exorbitant degree, but lose some focus in the middle of a conversation or dare try to not think about the topic at hand, and very quickly you'll find yourself getting outpaced. There was a lot happening almost at all times, which is why episode 1 is an example of when I feel this show is at its strongest. Smartly planting narrative seeds like mentioning Winter and Rosei early, as well as showing how the duo was acting independent of the Spring Agency's support. And while the implications of the info given are floating around in your mind, you're directly confronted with the aftermath of Hinigiku's disappearance, with the character Nazuna directly challenging the two's naivety, detailing a little girl's grief with her late mother, showing that the world also suffered without the manifestation of spring. This is the really good stuff, the type of poignant, on-the-nail writing we know Kana Akatsuki is capable of, evoking the emotions of many, myself included of course, with my fear then being what happens when we trade the simplicity of something like Violet, which is perfect for highlighting that writing, for the more high-stakes world of Four Seasons. That's a question that, with the 9 episodes out at the time of writing, at least tonally, I feel has been mostly answered. Violet was amazing in its ability to present characters in a really candid format and how Violet, the character, interface with them while picking up a few things along the way. Subtle is maybe too strong a word, but it definitely did all of that while giving you the space to think about what those people or Violet's learnings meant to you. In a word, it was grounded in the most complimentary way. Four Seasons, on the other hand, is as subtle as bombing children, which is not a terribly tone-deaf joke because they actually end up doing that. What the fuck, man? Shock value aside, and that is one big aside, I think an event like that speaks to the depths your show is willing to go to. Violet also had violence, there's many a war flashback, and even an entire episode where Violet's back to her old chops, but it never felt crass or so absurd that I felt like taking 5 mid-episode. That's harsh, and granted, Four Seasons definitely nails that feeling of ominous organizations moving in the shadows, but because the leaders of those groups are quite literally faceless, it makes it hard to form any type of connection with them. So when these large-scale events happen to our characters, they just happen. There are no nuggets of info we can pull from to build the identity of a big bad, or anything to offset the cutthroat nature of them, leaving an incredibly cold and unsatisfying taste in your mouth. I do wonder if making the attacks as evil as they are was a way to make up for their lack of identities, using scale as a means to get intrigue, which I would agree that it does, except that the intrigue ends up going nowhere, at least not yet. Anyway, because unlike the one-core series that is Violet Evergarden, a lot of that uncertainty can eventually be offset by the fact that Four Seasons, and specifically the current part Dance of Spring, is just one in the line of many. So if the plan is to set up this world with its over-the-top antics in service of a show and story that could eventually spawn 5 seasons, then that's a deal I'm actually pretty down for. Not to mention how episode 9 marked a shift in the show's direction in favor of a team-up style rescue operation, opening the door for a more collaborative effort amongst the, at this point, slightly disjointed cast seeming very, very promising. Violet is a personal story centered around a journey of self-discovery that eventually and very beautifully involves them to one about moving on. The scars of Violet's past being just as integral to this process as what she ultimately chooses to do next. I would like to say that 4 Seasons in the same vein is also a personal story. One about Hinigiko making up for all the time she's missed that also dives into and processes the damage done during her kidnapping, but I can't. Because just as every patch of snow serves as a stark reminder of Hinigiku's status and how long she's been gone, the world around her serves as a reminder too. At its best, and whenever we can get a quiet moment, you can feel the same emotional tissue that was part of Violet's DNA. But the times when the show lets those moments shine is few and far between, suffocated by the various assassination attempts and the debilitating chokehold grip of the 4 Seasons agency. If Violet was about moving on in a world that's forgotten you, then 4 Seasons is about moving on in a world that'll never forget you. And ironically, forget one of these worlds I might, but the other I truly never will.